I'm Kellen, and we've been talking about the life of Jesus and the people who chose to move and follow him. One of those people was Peter, who had a very bold faith at a time when it was kind of scary to share what you believed. But Peter was ready and set to move. At least that's what he thought. During what would be their Last Supper together, Jesus told Peter that Peter would deny knowing him 3 times. Peter said that would never happen. And then came the worst night of Peter's life. After they had eaten together, Jesus and his disciples went into the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. Peter and his friends were supposed to keep watch, but they fell asleep, and they didn't see the approaching soldiers in time. Judas, one of the disciples, was with the soldiers. He had betrayed Jesus and led them right to him. The soldiers had come to arrest Jesus, even though he had committed no crime. Peter wanted to fight, so he pulled out his sword, but Jesus said,
"Put your sword away. Shouldn't I drink the cup of suffering the Father has given me?"
Jesus was tied up and he was taken to the high priest to be questioned. Most of the disciples ran away, but Peter and John followed at a distance. Even though it had to have been dangerous, Peter and John made their way into the courtyard of the high priest. They were surrounded by people. They didn't know who they could trust. Eventually, someone recognized Peter and asked,
"You aren't one of Jesus' disciples, are you?"
Peter replied,
"I am not."
And then someone else thought they recognized Peter.
"Aren't you one of Jesus' followers?"
And Peter replied,
"I am not."
And then minutes later, a third person.
"Didn't I see you with Jesus in the garden?"
And Peter replied stubbornly,
"I don't know the man."
Jesus was completely alone. His friends had deserted him, even denied that they knew him. Then he was found guilty and sentenced to death on a cross. On a hill outside the city called Golgotha, the soldiers nailed Jesus to the cross and raised it into the air between 2 other men who had been sentenced to die. Now maybe Peter watched from a distance as Jesus lifted his eyes to heaven and said,
"Father, forgive them. They don't know what they are doing."
Then Jesus bowed his head and died. Jesus' body was taken down from the cross and put into a tomb with a large stone rolled over the entrance. In 3 days' time, a friend of Jesus named Mary Magdalene went to anoint Jesus' body with spices. She saw that the heavy stone had been rolled away and that the tomb was empty. So Mary ran to tell the disciples of what she had seen. After hearing this, Peter and John took off running as fast as they could to see the empty tomb for themselves. Looking in, they saw strips of linen lying on the ground. They saw the funeral cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. But what they didn't see was Jesus. His body was gone. They didn't understand what it all meant. Why would someone have taken Jesus' body away? The answer is, no one took Jesus' body. Jesus was alive. He had done the impossible. He had come back from the dead. And later that morning, Jesus revealed himself to Mary. And later still, Jesus would reveal himself to his disciples. And then there was that time on the beach. Jesus appeared to his disciples while they were fishing. They weren't catching any fish until Jesus showed up. Then, they caught a whole boat full. They brought what they had caught back to shore, and they had fish for breakfast. And when they had finished eating, Jesus pulled Peter away from the others and asked,
"Do you love me more than these others do?"
And Peter replied,
"Yes, Lord. You know that I love you."
"Feed my lambs."
Then Jesus asked again,
"Do you love me?"
And Peter replied,
"Yes, Lord. You know that I love you."
"Take care of my sheep."
And then, finally, for a third time, Jesus asked,
"Do you love me?"
Peter felt bad. He remembered how he denied knowing Jesus 3 times. And now Jesus was asking him if he loved him 3 times. But Peter replied,
"Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you."
"Feed my sheep."
despite all that had happened, Jesus forgave Peter. He still loved him. And not only that, Jesus wanted Peter to share to the world that he had lived, died, and risen again. And Jesus trusted Peter to take care of his other followers. And you know, I think that's what Jesus meant when he said, "Feed my lambs, take care of my sheep, and feed my sheep." You see, Peter messed up, but Jesus forgave him. And guess what? Everyone messes up. Everyone sins. But Jesus died to pay the price for our mess ups and all of our sins. And that's how much he loves you. You are forgiven too. And when you put your faith and trust in Jesus, you can learn to live like Jesus lived and love who Jesus loved. Now that is a move worth making. I'll see you next time.